Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we're going to be previewing the start of the Belgian cyclocross season, the televised cyclocross season. It's kicking off in Meulebeke this weekend with the Exact Cross, and with me here to discuss it is Issam.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We are so stoked to be starting the televised season. It should be a great start of the season. We'll be looking at all the favorites, who's coming in hot here, who has a bit of work to do potentially coming into the season, which races have we already seen, some new formats from us on the podcast. We now have a video format that won't be for all episodes, but definitely for a large number of them. Certainly we're thinking about the Sunday episodes and most of the midweek episodes. Saturday might be a bit difficult to turn around considering the workload with the double podcasts on the weekend. You can find the video versions on YouTube as well as Spotify for now. So let's dive into the action then, because the season is starting and many people have asked, what do we know about when the stars will start their season? So in summary, not everyone is starting their season right now. When people ask stars, I'm not sure they mean Eli Iserbyt, but he is one of the riders who isn't starting his season so far yet. Iserbyt will be starting his season somewhere in November. He's undergone some surgery, 3 different surgeries actually over the summer. And if you look at the pictures from the team presentation, Issam, I thought it was quite striking to see the differences in the sizes of his leg.
Yeah, and it's not strange, right? I mean, it's just difficult to make sure that it is somewhat evenly at the moment. You know, just the setback that he had, you know, the training, and it's just very hard to have that. I don't think it looks terrible, but obviously there is a difference, and it's not strange. You know, you have to try to recover that muscle that has been lost somewhat, and that's going to be a difficult challenge, I guess, for Iserbyt. And the question will be when he returns, if that is going to be on a level that we kind of expect from him, or it's going to be just that little bit less. And if that is the case, you know, then it's obviously going to be a struggle how you're going to cope with the season overall, and how you're going to, you know, try and get through that with the expectations maybe a little bit higher and the results not really showing for it.
I think it's a wise decision, okay, to start your season a bit later in that case. I mean, we've talked on this podcast a lot about, especially last year, right? Like, is what Ronhaar is doing the correct approach? Like, is what Thibaut Nys is doing the correct approach? Should you race or should you not race when you come into the season with a training deficit? And where Iserbyt was hoping to start in Ruddervoorde, I think it's a wise decision for him to just focus on later in the season. There's a lot of goods to be achieved there. You have the championships, the Belgian and the World Championships. The World Cup is all to play for, and that's his big goal of the season. A couple of riders he will face at that point is Thibaut Nys, who I just mentioned. He will start the season on the Koppenberg Cross. He will defend his European title this time out in Middelkerke. Wout van Aert, some talks about potentially starting his cyclocross season a bit earlier than in recent years, perhaps taking it a bit more serious after an earlier end to his road campaign compared to previous years. He would potentially be starting towards the end of November is what's being said, but because there's no Belgian races at that point, I find it hard to see him start the season in Tabor or Flamanville. So my expectation would be somewhere in December. And then we have Mathieu van der Poel, the reigning world champion. When will he start? That's also still unsure, but probably similar to last year, a campaign condensed over the Christmas period to the World Championships. And Pidcock, for that part, probably no cyclocross is what his trainer Kirk Bogaerts alluded to. About Van der Poel is on one question. Will this be another easy campaign for Van der Poel, in the sense that he, like last year, will win almost all of his races / all of his races? Or do you think this year there will be a bigger challenger to him?
It depends somewhat. I think it's going to be more or less the same in terms of what we can expect from him in terms of the form. He definitely is going to be motivated to be up there in good form in Hulst. And in terms of how he's going to race and how the racing will be and the amount of races, I think it's going to be quite similar. It's not going to be a huge surprise how he will show up. It's not going to be a huge surprise the way he will win. most likely. And that is in case nothing crazy happens. And I think that is definitely something that you can expect from someone that is so consistent over the last couple of years, that if the preparation is there and he is in good form, it's just very hard. He's a very hard rider to beat. He's the best, and by quite a margin as well. So I think that, he will choose his races. He will start his season quite late, and it will be enough most likely to get another world title. But I'm maybe getting a little bit, too much ahead of myself. We are only at October at this point, and I'm already starting to talk about a world championships. I mean, it's we have to wait for his rentrée and the way that is going, and then from there on we can talk about how the form is, and from there we'll see what happens. But obviously, we can expect something like that.
It's quite a high bar you're setting there, but honestly, I can agree with you, because what is there really for Van der Poel in cyclocross? It's the world title, right? It's his big goal, it's what he's going for, and we've seen it the last couple of years. It's super hard to beat him. Of course, there is the opportunity and the chance that Van Aert poses a threat. We saw that a few seasons ago, but that required a Van Aert who was near enough on his A game to get that next cyclocross world title. Has been waiting. The years are ticking up. The drought in cross in that sense is really starting to add up. So perhaps he is extra hungry. This season on the road he didn't race the World or European Championships. Overall it would be a somewhat disappointing road campaign for him. Of course sometimes due to external factors. So I think that needs to be the hope. I don't see Thibaut Nys or Tibor Del Grosso set that step just yet. I would like to see especially Thibaut Nys, who's a bit further ahead on the curve than Del Grosso. See him make that small step. See him come that little bit closer. In one of the races be able to hang with Van der Poel. He's taking a slightly different approach to cross now as well, with a longer rest period. And that's something I noticed. A lot of riders were talking about the need of mental rest after the road season. So I will be intrigued to see if Nys can make that step, and potentially Del Grosso, because what's good comes fast. On the women's side then, we also have a number of stars starting their season slightly later. Buck Pieterse, unknown when she starts. Blanca Vash, Zoe Backset, Mary Schreiber, all expected in action somewhere most likely in November, perhaps December. It's not really known yet what they will be up to. But Fem van Empel, we do know that the 3-time world champion, the 3-time reigning world champion even, will be starting her season in Ruddervoorde. And my question for Van Empel, Issam, is kind of the same as for Van der Poel. The world champion, the rider to beat. 2 seasons and 3 seasons ago she was near enough unbeatable. What do you think for this season? Do we go back to that? Or is what we saw last year with Brandt and Alvarado posing serious threats more of what we will get?
Can expect similar performances from Van Empel from what we have seen the last couple of years. Although last year, for example, at times it was a bit harder to achieve those results, and at times she failed actually to get those results. And I think it's currently just a little bit of guessing what to expect from Van Empel, to a sense of we don't really know how much everything has affected the preparation. I don't think that much really, but you never really know, and that is somewhat where the guessing is. But normally you can expect from someone like Van Empel that she will show up, that she will be there fighting for victory from the very first race, and that would be my expectations really. I would be surprised if she's not going to be able to get there in Ruddervoorde and have no mechanicals, no crashes, nothing unfortunate happening to her, and then at that point not being able to fight for a podium. I think if you would tell me that's going to happen, it would be a big surprise for me. So I think she will be up there. I think she will be up there fighting for a podium, maybe even potentially a win. I'm not going to say that as confidently as I said it about Van der Poel, but I think that you can expect something from a champion like Van Empel. It would not be too much to ask for, I think, and I hope that she's able to do that, because if that is not the case, that mentally you need to be quite strong to make sure that if you don't have that expectation of winning, then it's okay. But if you kind of were hoping to be up there at the front, and you failed in that regard, then obviously it's going to be a tough task to stay motivated or get motivated to go through the next couple of rounds. But yeah, I think normally Van Empel should be up there.
Again, I need to agree with that. I mean, last year you could call it a slightly underwhelming season if you compare to the seasons before, but it's still the world champion, and last year she still won like a dozen races, so how disappointing was it really? The fact that that is already considered a disappointing season for Van Empel should tell enough about the qualities she has. She should be up there, and we will see what it is. I do think that there will be riders that will pose a threat, and we'll come to that in a little bit. Let's move to Meulebeke then. Issam, I'm still recovering a little bit from the trip to the US, and I'm adapting to the temperatures here, which are slightly cooler already. And after all, I did get chartered around in a golf cart across the venue by a helicopter pilot who used to fly for the news, so chasing those riders certainly was quite spectacular for the footage. But Meulebeke is already around the corner. Can't really believe we're already there, but it's time. The season starts at a venue which is the first time it's hosting the season opener, but it's been gone for some years. It used to be, I think, there in the first round of the Exact Cross, which was then still called the Brico Cross. ATS series came later, and now we're at the Exact Cross. It's going to be a intriguing first race because the course is quite technical, and we see riders shaking off the rust early on in the season. Beringen with a tough physical climbing course wasn't a soft opener. This isn't a soft opener easy. We will see which riders perhaps already have a few races under their belt and which ones don't. And how are we going to tackle this podcast then? This year we have a new format which we will use for it. We're going to introduce some Cyclocross Social power rankings, starting with Issam's Mud Mountain.
Issam's Mud Mountain.
So in terms of power rankings, we're going to have two of them. We're going to have Issam's Mud Mountain. This is a tier list, pretty much a mountain, and the higher you are on the mountain, the higher Issam rates you as male rider at this point in the season. We're only going to use riders who are currently racing. So in this case, no Van der Poel, no Van Aert, no Pidcock, no Issam, no Nice. We're making a few guesses here this week because the Exact Cross in the big year 2025, the big 25, they still don't release their start list more than 24 hours in advance. Last year we got the joke of, oh, here's 10 riders who are starting the race, which came out on like Friday afternoon, and then on Saturday morning only the full start lists were published. So there's going to be some assumptions and guesses in there. It should be noted at this point that the start lists have been released whilst we are editing this podcast on Thursday. The race organizer gave an interview earlier in which he said many riders would be starting the race, which in fact aren't. So, for instance, on the women's side, which we'll get to, Lucinda Brandt and Senda Carmen Alvarado are in fact not starting their season as of yet. Sara Casasola also not on the start list. On the men's side, not everyone who was promised to us by the race organizer in his interviews is there either. So far, no Emil Verstringen on the start list, for instance, and Johan Wiesure is missing as well. But pretty much Issam ranks 15 riders, and that will change during the course of the season. It's going to either be in the Sunday episode right at the end of it after the weekend, or we're going to commit a full midweek episode to it. We're still trying to fine-tune this format a little bit. I will have Noah's 9 for the top woman riders. We will come to that in a bit. But now, get in for the first edition of Issam's Mud Mountain.
The section where I'm going to make a bigger fool out of myself than I already was. No. But yeah, kind of go to the lowest tier first. Tier 5, I have currently there Van der Bos, Toon van der Bos, Rijnkamp, Hendricks, Kuhn, and Wietse Meuse. I think, currently if we look at how their last season was and also the first couple of races that they were able to do somewhat, I think with Van der Bos, for example, is definitely a rider in which I expect him to sneak into the top 10 and maybe even top 5 if that is possible. But at times he was just a bit disappointing. Kamp was at times up there, but it wasn't the greatest of seasons for him. Hendrik seems to be on the up, so I think he definitely deserves to be on there, but it's just hard to put him higher up currently. Kevin Kuhn seems to be starting his season quite well, so we'll see what that will bring for him. And Wietse Meuse currently, definitely deserves also to be up there in on the ranking, but that is somewhat where I see him currently in tier 5. If we move up one tier, we go to the riders for Verstringen, Oorts, Toon Aerts, and Pim Ronhaar. I think with Aerts, we don't know if he's going to be starting actually in Meulebeke, but I have him up there anyways. And, for him, it's really sort of he can do better if the conditions are there, but it's just very hard to judge where he will be. And tactically, actually, at times he's sort of a letdown. Oorts had a very good season last season, but it's just I think that he's somewhat up there right now in tier 4. I think he can do better as well, but it's just going to be interesting if he can replicate that last season. Verstringen is a bit of a question mark for me, really. I think that he can be higher up if the conditions in the course is there for him, but it's just hard with that Tour de France how he, if that will kind of hamper his opening of the season and overall his cyclocross campaign. So we have to wait and see for that. And Ronhaar is for me the one that I currently have a little bit lower than maybe I should have had, but it's difficult because for him it's also somewhat of a question mark. He's entering this season. We know that he is capable of a lot, but it has to somewhat come out, and I hope that it's for him this year and this season, but I just don't see it currently happening right now, so that's why I'm having somewhat lower. Then we go to tier 3, which I have Van der Haar, Viseur, and Zweek. Van der Haar is someone that I actually wanted to put a little bit lower, but thanks to I put him a little bit higher because his season opening is at times incredible. I mean, we can look at last season, but overall he is someone that can start the season in quite good form. And, we have to look at that and take that into consideration, I guess. And with Viseur and Zweek, we have seen Zweek is able to pick his races. This is a race in which he should normally be up there at the front. And with Viseur, he made some great steps last year, and I hope that he is able to do that again. And that's why I think that he's definitely allowed to be up there so high, somewhat with the credit of last year, I have to say. But I think that this year is also not going to be a bad year for Viseur, and I think he will be very close or even better than he was last year. Tier 2, we go to the last two riders up, and then we go to tier 1, obviously. I have Van Toerenhout and Niels van de Putten. I think for Van Toerenhout, he is definitely a guy you can build a lot of confidence on, I guess. This is a course that suits him quite well, and overall, he's definitely someone that is always going to be somewhat up there. I'm interested to see what his form is going to be, because I think that last year for Poel Sauze wasn't the greatest of seasons. They will also now miss out on Iserbyt for a while. So Van Toerenhout has to be there on his A game to make sure that Poel Sauze is going to have the results that they somewhat want at the opening of a season. And Van de Putten is just, we have seen the growth of Van de Putten. I think that he has the potential to be up there with the very best. He has shown that last year as well, but I think this year he might be able to even make that extra step. I'm confident in him. His technical abilities are just up there, and I think that he's definitely able to, make something happen at the front and even contend for the win. And tier 1, number 1, for the first time that I'm ranking this is Joris Nieuwenhuis. I think with Nieuwenhuis, the way he ended his season, it's difficult to go off on that alone, but he gives me the impression that if Nieuwenhuis is on his A game, if the preparation went well, if everything somewhat went well, Nieuwenhuis is definitely a guy that should normally be able to be the best of the rest somewhat, if you know what I mean. If you take out the likes of maybe, of course, a Van der Poel and Van Aert and maybe a Nijs, but I think that Nieuwenhuis is the guy to watch, and that's why I have him at tier 1, number 1, and Hopefully he can not make a fool out of me, and I hope, to be honest, all the riders somewhat stay in that position and that order. But I think that's going to be a long shot, to be honest. But we have to wait and see. We'll see what comes out of it come Meulebeke.
So let's discuss your rankings then a bit, Issam. High expectations for Nieuwenhuis. That's definitely something that's being echoed a lot in the media, not only just because of that end of last season, but the expectations have been high for him for a while now. His return to cross was very highly anticipated. The expectations were downplayed. Oh, he needs time. He needs a full season. And then in that full season, things went well, but not that well. A lot was then made of his move to Ridley last year. Of course, he had shingles and his season was completely shattered and there was nothing he could do about that. So he recovered very well with the end of the season. I believe a 4th place at the World Championships. He was fighting for the Dutch title. It was a good race, a good season what we saw. Win in Meulebeke. I think he also won Oostmalle. That was good. Number 1, I can see where you're coming from, but I will say I think it's going to be very close, like we saw last year. This front pack of riders, definitely your tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are all riders that could win these races. So I personally have higher hopes maybe for Viseur and Verstringen at this point in the season. I would probably put Van Toeren out a bit lower. I don't think he's going to do that well. Here, early on, he normally needs a bit of time, although last year he was right there early on in the season. But I have 2 questions, Issam. No Cameron Mason on the mountain and no David Haverdings.
Wait, let's start with the easy one, I guess, for me, or the easier one. With Haverdings, for me, it's he has shown some promise in his road campaign, I have to say, and I had doubts about putting him in or not, but I feel like, for me at least, I need some confirmation before I'll do that. I think going off the progression that he has made, at least for me, it's personal, but I still have to be proven wrong somewhat, before I'll put him on. But he's definitely someone that could be, I wouldn't say a surprise, but I think for some he will definitely be a surprise if he is able to somewhat reach that level that was almost somewhat promised to him, a while ago, and just, because he was so unfortunate, was not really able to get to that level, and maybe he's now at last going to reach that. So I definitely I considered it, but at the end it just didn't really work out. And for Mason, his last season was good at times, but very inconsistent, and that threw me off so much. And I was like, I don't know what to expect from him. I mean, it could be that. Is he starting in Meulebeke actually?
I think he will be starting a season in Meulebeke, and I get why you don't put him. I just had to
point it out,
stick and give a bit of a shuffle into it, but. Else, if you didn't put him, I would be like, oh, no Mees Hendriksen, he started the season quite well. No Ryan Kamp, he already raced. There always has to be somebody off the mountain. I just wanted to point out that there are riders on the bubble. But Haverdings, I would have personally put him quite high. I think Haverdings is going to finish 6th in Meulebeke. I think he's going to be racing there. I think he will just be off that top 5, but I have very high expectations for him. His road season was very good. He doesn't, or never at least, came across to me as a strong road rider. He looks to have built his engine. So I think he will do very well, and we should definitely have some expectations for him. Final year U23, and I think he will be the main contender for the U23 world title together with Stefano Vietzi this season. Vietzi, I can see a point not to put him here. I don't know if he's starting right now, and he has a bit more to... I think there's more raw potential in Haverdings at this point than in Vietzi, but that's because Haverdings is further up on the curve, so I shouldn't have used the words potential. I just should have said more form, more engine. Then I do have a general point. As we discussed, Toon Aerts is on your list, Issam. Aerts last year came close a number of times to taking a win. He will be starting a season in Ruddervoorde. Is this it? Does this year he finally take that big win, Issam? Because Last year, we remember Namur, of course. There were a number of other races where he made some tactical errors. But does he get it done this year?
You know, I like to be positive. I was going to say probably not because he would choke somewhere, but and somehow. But I think that the form that he had last year, he should have at least rewarded himself with a big win, and he just at times. Yeah, I don't know what he was doing, to be honest. I think Namur definitely was a painful one, but he can only blame himself, really. And I think it depends really on how his form is going to be. If he just gets a little bit better than he was last year, which is possible, I think then maybe his, the margin of making a mistake, he will maybe get a little bit more. And also, like, tactically, he will also be, he's allowed then to make more tactical blunders, I guess, which then can help him for a potential win. So I think it looks somewhat good currently, but it depends all on his form, really, because if the form is going to be the same as last year, then it's going to be difficult, because then it's basically going to be the same song again. It's just, you're gonna look at it and you're gonna the mistakes will come, and then the fails will be there, and we will be talking about Toon Aert choking yet another race. And I really hope for him that that's not going to be the case. I don't wish him that, but it's just currently how it's looking for him. That's the way I look at it as well. And it really depends on his form as well. I think if his form is better as last year, that win is definitely coming. If it's not the case, then it's going to be a difficult task.
I think he will get it done even with the same form. I think last year his best opportunities were early in the season and he was starting at the back, and for a rider with his style, he then mounts up the mistakes a lot of the time. So I would say it's going to come. There will be probably this season 3, maybe 4 wins for Toon Aert. I'm going to stick with 3. It will be quite difficult. I can maybe see the Koppenberg being a good opportunity for him. Overijse comes early in the season. That's another good course for him. So I think we could see him perform well in those races early on. His main rival for those type of courses from the full-time crossers will be Van Toerenhout and Verstringen. Meulebeke, a bit flatter course, quite technical. You have the pump track, you have the sand pit. The start-finish is, the start is important because just like the finish, it is on the athletics track, and then it's quite narrow early on. So we could see an interesting race scenario play out there. I think you mentioned earlier point about Ronhaar. It will be interesting to see how he moves up. And other than that, I guess Niels van der Putten is the question is, can he make that next little step? He's been progressing just little by little every year, and that's been really good for him. Last year took his first World Cup win, he racked up a number of wins, but the question I think will be, can he make that step and now become one of the best riders in terms of race wins? Last year he racked up a number of podiums, he was just off the podium a few times as well, but can he become not necessarily a heir to the throne of Iserbyt in terms of racking up those wins, but at least win a bit more? I'm not saying last year I feel like he should have won more races, but it is kind of the logical next step to expect, right? What comes after your first Super Prestige win? It's your first World Cup win. And what comes after your first World Cup win? Contending the World Cup overall. Being a fighter, consistently winning races.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that is kind of what I feel is possible. I think that he went through that stage of getting those big wins. But I feel that he is somewhat ready to be more consistent now, and consistency is also, that comes a little bit with experience and knowing how to pace yourself through a double header, through a season overall, and be patient, and it's just experience plays a significant role in how to manage your season and how to manage the doubleheader and all that, and how to manage the classification and the choices you have to make, where you're going to start, where you're not going to start. And I think that if you take that into account, then it's definitely, then I feel that step can be made, and I have confidence that that step will be made, to be honest. But it can also not happen. It's we are someone in the business of guessing currently, and if you have to guess, I would guess that step will be made.
There can always be a setback, and you know how those things go. That's always a possibility. It will be interesting because it was so close last year. Like, these small changes, like just a year older for Van der Haar, can mean that he significantly falls back down the order. That Tour de France in the legs, it could mean that Verstringen moves very far forward because his engine is much bigger. So there's a lot of factors coming in here, and we will see the first things unfold in Meulebeke this weekend. I'm just going to leave the predictions for that race for what it is, Issam, because there's no start list yet, so I really see no point in going out and fully speculating. I mean, we've made some assumption on who's starting and who isn't, and who's been racing and who hasn't, but we'll leave that for this weekend's episode when we actually discuss the racing. Moving on then, it's time for the Women's Power Ranking.
Catch the heat!
Noah's 9. Coming in at number 9, Alicia Frank. New team for her. She's racing for Lotto X Oats this season. She's raced 4 times already. She's won all 4 of those races. She seems on hot form and therefore for sure a rider to be mentioned on this list. Coming in at number 8, the Belgian champion Marion Norbert Ribeyrolles. Normally not a very, very fast starter to the season, needs more muddy conditions, but considering a lot of top riders aren't yet starting their season, she should be mentioned in the top 9 riders at the moment. Then at number 7, the winner of 5 out of the 6 USCX Series races, Magali Rochette. It will be a time before we see her in Europe, but her form has seemed very promising, beating Manon Bakker and Sydney McGill every single week except one time when she was involved in a start crash. It will be a time before we can see where she really stands, but for now she has a place on my list. In 6th place, it's Aniek van Alphen, rider for the Cyclocross Reds. Last year wasn't the season she hoped for, she flamed out. It was actually very disappointing. There were some talks about potentially her contract not being really secure after that, but so far there's been nothing of that coming out. She's normally a good starter to the season. She's better on climbing courses. That's not what this season starts with, but she should be in the top 10 for the Cyclocross Reds. At number 5 is Laura Verdonschot. She was, even last year early in the season, despite her injuries and her narrowed arteries, in the top 5 of the races. The question is, can she this year make the step that was hoped last year? And if she can, she should be able to challenge for the podium. So far, I don't think that will be the case, and I put her at number 5. That is just behind Inge van der Heijden, who is in 4th place. The Dutch rider had a very strong ending to the last season, winning a number of races, being on the podium of a number of races as well. Last season was consistent. We attributed a lot of attention to the fact that she's now a very well-rounded rider, so she's in at number 4. On the podium, 3rd step, Sara Casasola, the Italian champion, didn't have a great ending to last season. Several illnesses set her back, but the form we saw earlier in the season should not be forgotten. At 2nd place, Sendo Carmen Alvarado, rider who we've seen the last couple of seasons start her season very well. Normally the first race is a bit more difficult for her, although the technical nature of the course in Meulebeke suits her. I was very torn if I should put her 1st or 2nd, but ultimately I have my reservations about everything that's going on with her physically, the back issues of the last couple of seasons that come back every single year. I'm therefore just a little bit cautious. And then at number 1, opening ranking of the season, Lucinda Brandt. Last year, a fabulous season. The only thing that was missing was the world title. But after such a season, and with Van Empel not there, she is my number 1 coming into the season.
It's interesting. I mean, I think, I don't know, I would have also had this challenge of who I would put first in terms of Brandt and Alvarado. I think that Alvarado, if the preparation went well and everything is going all right, it's, she normally, I wouldn't say normally, but these type of courses and the opening of the season, at times she should be able to challenge Brandt. But it's just, as you said, I guess it's just a bit difficult to expect that Alvarado has basically, everything went well and physically she's okay and 100%, and those are a lot of ifs, and I think that is just maybe a bit difficult to choose. I mean, Casasola, do you think maybe that's maybe a bit too high so early on in the season, considering that last season how she ended it and then she came somewhat strong back as well? But I don't know. I kind of want to be critical about it, but I don't really know how I should be critical about it.
I think you shouldn't. You should just respect the hierarchy here. No, in all seriousness, I mean, I do think Casasola deserves to be third. Yes, last season the ending wasn't amazing, but she did bounce back a bit, right? Towards the World Championships, her form improved. She finished in the top 10 there. She finished second in Meulebeke in a course that didn't really suit her. Without the sandpit there, she should have normally been a real challenger to Van der Heijden. I think she has what it takes for it to be in the top 3 here. Last year she started the season well. Okay, Bering, great course for her, but she was up there in Ruddervoort on a course that didn't suit her. So yes, I think she deserves to be there. I think I don't have a tier list, right? But I think there's a differentiation between Brandt, Alvarado and the rest. Brandt isn't exactly the best starter to the season. That can put Alvarado in there just a little bit closer. But yeah, I feel quite confident in putting Casasola in third. I have high expectations for her. I'm already thinking about the Koppenberg, and well, Van Empel is probably going to race there, which makes a win extremely difficult. But yeah, I am looking at Casasola in the sense that, to me, she just comes across as a rider type like Clara Honsinger, but with the improvements we wanted to see from Honsinger in the time. Honsinger did well on those courses that were slow, that were climby or muddy. And we just said, if Honsinger can just get a good start for once, if she can just improve her technique on the flat courses by a little bit, it will be so hard to stop her. If her sand skills become just that little bit better. And Casasola has developed quite quickly into a rider, also because she's getting that environment at Krela. And I still think it's an absolute disgrace no European team ever touched Honsinger, because the talent was clearly there. But with the investments made in Casasola, I think she has everything what it takes to be a fighter for the podium so early in the season, and she should honestly have a handful of races this season in which she challenges for the win.
You had Van Alphen in 6th, right? Yeah.
Indeed.
I mean, is it safe to say that this season is somewhat a make or break season for her? I would say somewhat similar to the situation Bakker is in, but maybe even, I don't know if it's worse, but it's definitely, it looks similar to me at least.
Yeah, I'm just looking at her results right now, if they were actually the way I remembered them, and yeah, they are. They were not good last year, especially towards the end of the season. She's out of contract, I believe, at the Cyclocross Reds, and she's the same age as Bakker, so the same points we made about Bakker last week and teams looking for younger riders, those apply. We have a piece out on our Substack, Inside Cyclocross with Manon Bakker, in which she says, "At the moment I'm not feeling stressed about my contract situation, but ask me come February, and I might answer totally differently." And she raises some points about the overall sport. The number of teams is staying the same. The budget of these teams is staying the same. And adding to that is that these teams are therefore not taking on more riders. They're not broadening their bandwidth. Their bandwidth stays fixed. So that means that if you're the worst performing rider on the team, which arguably Van Alphen is, I mean, Guus van der Einde hasn't really shown much either, but he's still a U23, then you are going to be on a tricky and peculiar position. I mean, the same goes for Mason. His contract, I believe, is also up. On the men's side, they need to perform, and Van Alphen last year, she just didn't have it. I mentioned it, she flamed out, so it's important for her to start her season well and then convince them by finishing in the top 10 of the World Cups again that they need to extend there. I think it will be difficult considering how strong the women's field will be in the World Cup. Vars Bakstedt, Schreiber, Pietersen, all these names flowing in. It will be very, very fierce competition to finish in those back-end top 10 spots with a lot of riders that we saw much further to the forefront a number of years ago.
Yeah, and I think Rochette, it's difficult, to be honest, well, it's not really that difficult. I mean, Bakker gives you an indication what her form currently is at. Do you think that where you placed her at 8? 7?
No, I placed her at 7, still ahead of Ribeiro and Frank.
Do you think that will somewhat also be the case the longer the season goes, that she will be ahead of those women, or is that just now currently the form and that will eventually somewhat fade or not?
I think Ribeiro will probably move up in my rankings. Van Alve, I fear, will move down. Where do I see Rochette? Well, in the interview with her last week, which is also out on our Substack, she said she wants to make a full push to return to the World Cup podium, or at least top 5. She really wants to be at the forefront of these races again. Maybe I have taken those words a bit too much too hard by placing her in here based on the North American circuit, which we've seen be somewhat disappointing over the last couple of years. But I do believe that in reality, Rochette is a rider that can finish in the top 10 of courses that suit her. She does well historically on slippery courses, snow races, Val di Sol, muddy races, Besançon. Those were the better courses for her. Middle, elevation, flat. And look at last year. She raced the Dublin World Cup 15th despite racing with mono. And that's X is 1, right? Sample size super small. But I do, in essence, believe in Rochette and that she can and will finish in the top 10 of a number of World Cups this season. So I think until proven differently, she will stay in my top 9 until she races in Europe.
I think I don't think I have any more to add, really. I think it's a solid list. It's hard to... I think it's actually harder for you to rank them currently than it was for me to put them in a tier, because maybe there's just a little bit more... I don't know. There is more results to go off on currently on the men's side than it is on the women's side. But maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of how I look at it currently.
I would agree with you. We've seen the women's racing isn't bad because we still have a lot of close fights for the win, right? Last year we had early in the season Van Empel with Alvarado Brandt and from time to time Casasola in there. Perhaps this year Van der Heijden and Verdonschot can challenge. But on the men's side last year we had these whole pelotons of 10, 15 riders at the front. I mean, I believe it was Merckx+, which was just 12 riders going into the final lap together and just that harsh sprint in the end for the win. So that's definitely harder to rank at the moment, but I'm sure my rankings will become increasingly complicated as the season progresses and more top women will drop into the field coming from the road or mountain bike. Good, then I think that wraps it up for this pre-season episode. Thank you so much, Issam.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having me.
And we will be back this weekend with a podcast about the Exact Cross in Meulebeke that will probably be out for you on Sunday. Thanks everyone for listening and goodbye.